Hello, my name is Anurag Saxena, and I'm explaining how a story really works in a typical day in an agile development, how the life cycle works. Um, I'm going to start with assuming that there is a story that is already written, and we have three actors here. We have a product owner, which is represented as PO, development engineer, and QA engineer. Um, all three of them, product owner, development, and QA engineers, they come together and they discuss the story, what is needed to be achieved. They also refine the story, which means refining any description that is there. Also writing or refining more on the success criteria or acceptance criteria. Furthermore, they also try and estimate how, what is the effort that may be needed to get that story done. Once all that is done, it kind of forks into two parts. The first part, in which the development engineer starts analyzing the story, does any kind of designing that may be needed, and starts doing test driven development, which means that they write the failing unit test cases first, and then write the code to make the test cases pass and then refactor if needed, which is a typical test driven development cycle. Very important agile practice. Also, on the other side, the QA engineer who has also understood the story, they start writing test plan and test cases. They start preparing any test data that may be needed for the testing of for executing those test cases. Once the development is complete at the unit level locally and the test cases are produced, both QA and dev engineers, they come together and identify a regression scope, which means that it's possible that a story may be touching points or data points, code that is outside the scope of story, which may need some level of testing as well if there's any impact. So that scope is also added. Typically, that scope is missed. So it is very important that it is always analyzed and documented, and the effort for that increased scope is also factored in the whole story estimate. Also, the test cases are reviewed that are written by the QA engineer. They are reviewed not just by some QA peer, but also development engineer and also product owner if possible, which is typically what is suggested for critical stories. On the development side, once the local development is complete, there's some dev testing that should be completed by the dev engineer. They test it against the acceptance criteria. Um, and if there are any changes to the code that are needed for any issues that are found in the local dev testing that is made. Uh, Further, after that, there is a code review cycle, which is done by a peer. If you're not doing pair programming, this code review cycle may take a few rounds where you incorporate the review comments and then do the code review of the review comments that are incorporated. Once the review is complete, the code is committed to the version control from where it is built and deployed by the dev and the QA engineer together. So the review test cases, they come together. Now you have the build, and which is also deployed in an integration environment. At this point in time, QA has everything to execute the test cases that are written earlier on. Once the test cases are executed, the results are published and they are reviewed by development and product owners, who is responsible for the story. If there are any issues found or there are any test case failures, uh, the the workflow goes back to any code changes that are required. Uh, those code changes are done locally by the dev engineer. Also follows the same code review cycle. Once the code review is complete, it's committed and built and deployed with a new build given to QA. They run the test cases, which may be necessary this time, the second time around. Once everything looks good, you have a checklist, which is called definition of done, typically, and it goes beyond just the development work and the QA work that is needed for a story. There could be things like design documentation that may be needed. There may be things like if there are any deployment level, configuration level changes that have to be communicated to different teams, things of that nature. Once all that is done and you have everything checked in the checklist, at that point in time you are there to close that story. So one of the important things here to understand is that QA, dev, and product owners, they're working collaboratively. The dev is not we are not closing any story until there it satisfies an acceptance criteria, which may involve some cycles of code review, some cycles of QA issues that needed to be fixed. So QA is not really finding bugs, they are actually preventing any defects to be leaked into the release. So, which is a great change in the mindset. So, again, it is a collaborative effort on a daily basis, and the story is not closed until all the issues are addressed and we have everything checked for definition of done. So, hopefully, this was useful. This is how typically an agile development works. And I'm a big fan of agile development, especially all the agile practices, including test-driven development, identifying regression scope, different estimation techniques. So hopefully this should help you in your development as well. Thank you very much.